HarperCollins presents Crime Scene K-9 by Julie Miller, read by Emma Lysy.
Mom's Group. Dear longtime friends who read my books and know stuff. Winky face. Thanks for brainstorming some plot points with me over our yummy, gossipy monthly lunches. Chapter 1. July 24th. Master Sergeant Levi Callahan booted up the computer in the communications building and reached down to pet a panting Skye, his German Shepherd partner, who stretched out across his sandy boots beneath the table while he waited for the program to come up. "Hurry up and wait," he groaned. He breathed deeply, fighting to slow his elevated heart rate and rapid breathing after that sprint across the base from the front gate. Summer in the Middle East was no joke. Even at 10 in the morning, it was 100 degrees. So the air conditioning needed to keep the computers and communications equipment cool was a welcome respite. But spending time out of the sun and sand and heat wasn't why he and Skye had run. Even a month ago, he wouldn't have been this eager to grab the earliest slot available for communicating with the home front back in the States. Sure, he had a sister and a best friend, who was now married to said sister, to call and catch up with. But Lexi and Aiden understood the demands of his career as a military cop and dog handler in the Corps, and they didn't mind when he had to cancel a call home or even not respond to an email for several days. They'd worry, sure, if his priorities changed and he had to delay messaging home, but they understood. He wasn't calling home this morning. Time and timing were precious to him now, because something had changed the week he'd been home on leave over the 4th of July holiday. He'd met Zoe Stockman. Zoe, who'd had a panic attack at the large gathering of friends and coworkers celebrating Independence Day. Zoe, who'd let the big ol' Marine who'd noticed her white-knuckled grip on the arms of her lawn chair comfort her. Zoe, who'd let her boss's big brother hold her hand, then hold her in his lap, then get her out of there when it all got to be too much. Levi had spent most of the next several days with Zoe, most of the nights, too. He'd fallen in love. At the age of 38, when he'd been considering the possibilities of bachelorhood or settling for a woman who'd make a good partner, Levi had been blindsided by the blue-eyed beauty. Way smarter than he'd ever be. Quiet, vulnerable, Zoe had needed him in a way that spoke to his desire to be of service to others and his loyalty to a team, to the Corps and to his country. She listened, too. That first night had been all about holding her and helping her sleep and recharge for a new day. But then they'd driven down to Truman Lake, where they'd gone for a long walk, and they'd talked. They'd done some touristy things. He'd met her for lunch. He visited the Kansas City Crime Lab, where she worked as a criminalist. They'd talked about his service, why he'd enlisted after high school. They'd discussed his parents' tragic deaths and her mother's passing from cancer. They discovered a shared love for dogs, snow, Italian food, and Royals baseball. They'd discussed her anxiety issues and how she was treating her condition with therapy, lifestyle changes, and occasional medication. They'd strategized what he might do with his life when his stint in the Corps was up in December, what types of jobs he'd be suited for, if he'd need further education, what his second career might be. And they'd kissed. They'd made out. His last night before catching his flight out of KCI Airport, they'd made love. He hadn't intended to take things that far, but when he'd told her he was worried about how fragile she was and didn't want to make anything worse, Zoe had gotten pissed. Then she'd proceeded to show him just how remarkably strong she was once she got out of her head and focused on achieving the thing she wanted. That first time had been a wild battle of wills that had had him so out of his mind with lust that he'd barely gotten a condom on. He'd held her tightly in his arms afterward,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?